Welcome to this episode of the Gunman. So this video here is a review and demonstration on the new DeVilbiss GPI. It comes straight out of the box with a 1.4mm fluid tip on it, but then you can actually get the extra 1.6 and 1.8 as you see me have here. They do share their own needles, so if you do want to get them, you will have to change that needle over. I'll show you guys how to do all that before we get into actually using the gun. It really is quite a simple process to change them over, but I may as well give you guys a quick run through it. It's fairly similar to most of the other DeVilbiss spray guns, so if you're familiar with how to pull a DeVilbiss gun apart, this will be not much different at all. There is actually many similarities between this and the DeVilbiss GTI Pro. From what it looks like to me, they've used the same mold, but they have changed a few things around on this gun, as you'll notice straight away as we get into unboxing it here. It's a different color for starters. It's got the chrome body on it, whereas the GTI Pros had the maroon or red handle on the spray gun itself. Also the fluid tips, I believe you can't get this gun in a 1.2. I think it's just 1.4, 1.6 and 1.8, whereas the GTI Pros came out with the option of a 1.2, 3 or 4, but I believe that you could not get it in a 1.6 or 1.8. So how much is one of these going to cost? I got it from Spray Guns Direct in the UK, and these things are an absolute steal at 300 Australian dollars. So for people in the UK, you will have to pay the VAT. I think that that's all over Europe as well. So that's just an extra £30. So £150 plus your £30, but either way, that is still a well-priced gun. If you're in America, well, you get it even cheaper because obviously the American dollar is pretty high at the moment. So you'll get one of these for under $300, well under $300, and this is a hell of a lot of gun for what you pay for. Either way, I like to run a air regulator on the bottom of my gun, but this gun does not come with one, so I actually already had one from before that I put on. It also doesn't come with a gun spanner or cleaning brush, but to someone like me, that's really not a big deal, and I'm not going to miss it because I've had that many guns over the years. I've got enough gun spanners hanging around, and I've also got enough cleaning brushes around, so for me, not a big deal. Just something that when you are buying one of these, you might want to keep that in mind, that you will need your own spanner and your own cleaning brush. Anyway, that's how easy it is to change your needles over. So you just pull the back out, you pull that spring out, you pull your needle out, you change your fluid tip over, and then you put the one in that you want. It's really that simple. Anyway, we won't stuff around for too much longer. I'll get this back together and then we'll get some paint in it and show you guys how it actually sprays. So first off, we'll be using the 1.4mm fluid tip for base coat and then clear coat after that. Once I've given you guys a look at how it goes for clear over base, we'll be using the 1.6mm for acrylic, just a quick demo on that one, and then we'll go to the 1.8mm and show you guys how it goes for primer. The thing that really appeals to me about this gun is that it's an all-in-one. Someone who doesn't want to go out there and have to buy one gun for primer, one gun for clear coat, one gun for 2-pack, and all these different spray guns. If you buy this gun, it's reasonably priced and you get all of the fluid tips with it, well then you've got one gun that does everything. I'd probably get this along with a mini gun and you're set. So I'm using the Concept No Mix base coat here, and the settings that I'm using is full fan, full fluid, and 20 psi. It's really that simple. You can wind that fluid in a little bit if you like, and I will be winding it in a little bit for clear coat, but I've really found it's not necessary for your base coat to go and wind it in because you just want to get it on. You know, if you get it on a bit too heavy, there's really a very slim chance of getting runs in your base coat, and if you're getting runs in your base coat, you really got to look at your application methods because you're definitely doing something very wrong if you are getting runs in your base. Yeah, I'll just like to have that opened right up, and then yeah, around 20 psi. You can play around with those settings if you like. You can wind that fan in maybe a turn or two, and I have done that on different occasions, but found it's not necessary just for an average everyday repair or paint job like this. Have a look at the size of that fan. We've got the clear in there now. I did wind that fluid in, so the fluid I went right in just to gauge where we're at, and then you come out 4 full turns with that. For clear coat, that's perfect. Again, you can change those settings. In the middle of winter, if I found myself getting runs, well then I'd probably go in an extra turn. I'll just see what feels right. if you go too far in, you're just not going to get enough paint out. And yeah, sometimes you're better off just having it a little bit further out and then moving a little bit quicker, because if you go in too far, you're just simply going to be forced to go too slow, and you may end up actually finding you're going through more paint, and it may have an adverse effect. You might think, well, less fluid, I'll go through less paint, but yeah, it sometimes makes it so that you go so slow. Now on this first coat here, I had it reduced out to 20%, and I'm using the Standox HS Clear. You'll notice on the second coat I only went 10% reducer, and I will be going a lot slower. It also will be closing that fan up. Main reason I did that is because I actually had quite a few bits of dust land in this job. Unfortunately, it's one of those things that just happens sometimes in this trade. We can do our best, and I did spend a long time prepping and doing everything I could to keep this job clean, but a few bits of stuff landed in it. So my way of fixing that was to leave the paint a little bit thicker and then try and bury some of those bits of dust in the second coat of clear coat. You obviously have to be pretty careful when you're going and doing stuff like this. If you go and put it on too thick, there's a few things that can happen. You can either go and get runs, or if you put too much on, you can also get solvent boil, which are basically little air pockets inside the clear coat. And once you get that, sometimes you can't even get rid of it without polishing it, or even flow coating sometimes, depending on how bad it is. It's really something that you've just got to know your limits in spray painting. But as far as availability goes, I believe this gun actually won't be introduced into the Australian market, maybe because they've already got enough guns over here and they just decided it's a fairly small market, so you know what, we don't need another gun, which is basically very similar to the GTI Pro. So they may end up selling too many of these and not sell their Pros. But there is options out there for any Australian viewers, and I do highly recommend jumping on spraygunsdirect.co.uk if you are interested in one of these guns. It's a one gun, does it all. I would highly recommend it for a DIY guy, because you can just get this gun. It's going to last you a lifetime. Not like some of those $2 super cheap guns that the seals will just blow out after a few uses, and then you're blown, you know, you might think, oh, I'm saving a couple of $100 in buying this gun and I don't use it all the time like the Gunman does. But over time, this thing will last. It will be working in 10 years, I could just about guarantee. I've actually still got the very first spray gun I ever bought. It was a original DeVilbiss GTI. 15 years later, it's still working absolutely fine. All I've had to do is replace a packing gland or two where it just started leaking, and they're a $2 part, so it's not expensive at all. Most spray guns on the market with the DeVilbiss brand on them are actually quite good spray guns. However, there are a few exceptions. I would probably steer clear of the starting line guns, and the finishing line guns are a step up from the starting line. But personally, I find the HVLP option on them a little bit annoying. You can get good finishes with them, but without a half decent compressor that supplies a lot of air to a HVLP spray gun, which is required, you may struggle to get good finishes. So in a DIY home garage type environment, I would probably steer away from the HVLP spray guns, which is a good thing about this gun here. It is a conventional air cap. I can just tell by looking at the size of the holes that the air comes out on an air cap, whether or not it is HVLP, LVLP or conventional, and this is conventional. They call it a GP1 air cap, and I actually tried. I got the air cap off my Pro Lite. It does fit on there. However, when I pulled the trigger, the fan was just tiny. So look, basically I've got no real reason to go and start changing the air caps over on this spray gun. I guess if it was a last ditch effort and it was all I could do to figure out how to get this spray gun to work, I may try putting it back on again, but I've really got no need to. The GP1 air cap works totally fine, and 1.4mm works actually very nicely for clear. I guess you would have to be a little bit careful if you are used to using a 1.2 or 1.3mm for clear coat, that you don't go and get runs, because obviously you're going to be putting a little bit more fluid out than what you may be used to. So that's all painted. All in all, I'm actually quite happy with it. DeVilbiss GPI, it's gone really quite well. Just above 20 PSI, so maybe 21, 22 PSI, full fan, 4 turns on the fluid. There is a few more bits of dust than I guess I would have liked in it, but there's no runs, there's no dry spray, there's no silicone holes, so all in all, I am definitely very happy with it. Use the Standox HS Clear, and got a nice wet finish with it. So as I mentioned before, this is just a little demo, just a couple of minutes here for a quick look at how it runs with the 1.6 fluid tip on it. It's one of those in-between sizes. I guess it's not something that I can really imagine I'd be using very often. I mean, I'd usually, for primer filler, I'd want to go the 1.8. Clear over base, I'd definitely go for a 1.4 or smaller. So the only real way I could think of actually using that 1.6 was for acrylic, because if I use a 1.4 for acrylic, I've found it just doesn't quite put enough out, and I can imagine that a 1.8 is probably just that little bit too much. So there you go, another thing, DIYers that are spraying a little bit of this and a little bit of that at home, it probably could be a perfect spray gun for you, because you have got the option of spraying your acrylic clear and base with the 1.6, and it's affordable. You know, it's not a $500, $600, $700, $800 spray gun. It's $300, and all you pay for the extra couple of fluid tips is $50 Australian, so that's 26 pounds. I'm sure that'll be around $40 in America. If you've got a starter jet and you want an extra fluid tip, just for one, you'll be paying over $300. Even for an apprentice that wants a primer gun and something that they can use colour through as well, I would recommend giving it a good clean out every single time you use it, especially for primer. Now usually when I've got a primer gun, I don't even worry about giving it a good strip down, because you know, all you're going to be doing is putting primer through it next. So if you get a little chunk spitting out in your primer, it's not as much of a big deal as if you were to not clean this out properly when you used it for primer and then have a chunk of primer spitting out into your top coat color. Well, then that's a bit of a disaster, and you're probably looking at respraying something. So yeah, every time you use it for primer, at least give it a good strip down. It only takes a couple of minutes to pull it apart, make sure all those chambers are nice and cleaned out. Then the next time you do decide to go and put your color or clear coat on, you know that you're going to be safe in not getting any contamination. The primer I'm using here is one of my favorites. It's the Concept Paints HS primer. Find it dries nice and well, it doesn't take too long to dry, it sands easy as well, and it gives you a nice film build. So first couple of coats I left them a little bit thin. You may have noticed at the start that that fan was a little bit smaller, but you'll probably notice on the last coat the fan's actually going to open up a bit, because I'm putting more thinners in there, so it's not being restricted so much by how thick it is. So the settings I'm using for the primer stage is full fan, full fluid, and a little bit less pressure on the first couple of coats. Well, that first coat that you saw me putting over the filler, that was just at 15 PSI. I might have come up to 18 PSI on these second couple of coats, but if I had a fairly decent sized filler repair, I'd probably put 2 or 3 coats over that first, then thin it out just as a surfacer. As you see, this was just a brand new panel anyway, so I only really needed just a couple of coats over there just to act as a surfacer, not so much a primer filler. So I want that pressure up a little bit higher, even coming up to 18 to 20 PSI, so you're going to get that on nice and flat. It's going to create less orange peel, and it's also going to make it a lot easier for you to sand when you do go to sand it back. Now you can see what I was talking about before, with that little bit extra thinner in there, that bit more pressure, I'm able to go a lot more quicker, and that fan has opened right up. But as I say, that less pressure, it's going to create more orange peel, but you want that thick orange peel over your filler repairs. So yeah, there's no one absolute 100% setting that you leave the entire time for every single application. You must change those settings around and change your application to suit the job that you're doing. And hey, they do have settings on that gun for a reason, so that you can set them. If there was one setting that was an absolute and everyone should be using it, well then they would all just be set to that exact setting and no one would have to worry about touching it. Whenever I'm cleaning a gun out, I like to wipe the bulk of the paint out with a rag first, then put some clean gum wash thinner in there, back pressure it as you saw me do then. So just shake it up and back pressure it and flush it through. That's going to give most of the chamber a clean out. Then take it over to my awesome gun wash machine here, the DIY gun wash machine, which some people may have already seen the other video. I did a video on how I actually made this thing. It's looking a little bit dirtier than last time you may have seen it, but don't worry, it does the job just fine, and it still works just as good as what it did when it was brand new. Once I'm done in there, cleaned every single part down, I just grab a nice clean rag, wipe all the rest of it off. If there's any thinners left or any little bits of paint left off, do that, and then you put all the parts back in, give it another flush through after it's been put back together, because there may be a little bit left in that chamber. Most of the time there's not much left, and you'll be able to see if that thinners inside the pot is clean after you've given it one last back pressure. As it turns out, it is this time, and it's a mission success. Gun gets a big thumbs up. If you're interested in getting one, I do highly recommend getting one of these guns. I think I'm going to own this one for a long time because it is an all-in-one gun. It actually saves a couple of guns. It basically made it so that I didn't need so many guns, so I was actually able to get rid of a few guns that I had before. I got rid of the FLG5 or the SGK. I also got rid of my Anesti Water AZ3 1.8. Main reason is that I was actually starting to get a few too many guns, and also I'm actually able to show you guys new guns and show you the what else is out there on the market if I get rid of some of my old guns for new guns. Had I not had this YouTube channel, there is no way I would have probably got this gun or even the SGK, but SGK definitely gets thumbs up from me. This definitely gets 2 big thumbs up from me as well. It wins on price, it wins on versatility, probably over the SGK for versatility. Yes, it is a little bit more expensive, but sometimes it can be a false economy to go and save a couple of dollars, especially on tools, and you may regret it later. This is a quick look at that HZ Ute when it's all done. Be sure to check out my website. I've actually been really busy in the last couple of weeks making that look a lot better for you guys. Now you've seen this video, get out there and paint some shit. Thanks for watching, and this has been another Gunman production. Goodbye.